Job and you'd like to be ready for whatever that HR person throws at you, today is your day. We're going one-on-one with a director of human resources to learn how we can be ready to impress on your next job interview. Welcome to the interview presented by New Horizons Computer Learning Centers of Wisconsin. I'm your host, Pat Miller. The show is also sponsored by Forward Careers. This show is a one-on-one interview and a Q&A session with an expert that can help you get a job and grow your career. So if you're serious about getting a new gig, don't forget the thousands of training courses New Horizons can offer you to up-level your skills, from an intro to computers to something you can take right on your mobile device, to Windows training, to immersive technology courses to prep you in the growing fields of cloud computing and cybersecurity. New Horizons of Wisconsin is making computer training simple and fun so you can get a job better than you can even imagine. Learn more about New Horizons at newhorizonswi.com. The show is also sponsored by Forward Careers. Forward Careers is a team of workforce professionals that specialize in providing career planning, skills training, and supportive services to assist individuals aged 14 and up that are unemployed or underemployed. Not only will you find out what jobs are in demand, a Forward Careers representative will work closely with you to define your career goals and help you find or prepare for the job you want. They know the job market, and they've built relationships with many of the region's businesses across all industries. Get started with them today at forwardcareers.org. Funding is provided by the Department of Labor, Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, H-1B, Tech Hire Grant, Department of Corrections, Windows to Work, and Children and Families Independent Living. One more thing before we start. You might want to visit this link and make sure you don't miss an episode of the interview. So click subscribe on the YouTube page or the Facebook page where you're watching the show, because we're creating content all the time and we don't want you to miss a single episode of the interview because we're trying to help you get ahead. All right. With all of that said, our chat is up and live. If you have a question during the show, drop it in there and we'll get it in. But let's get down to business. We're talking with a director of human resources about the hiring process. And when you're looking for a job, boy, it can sure seem like it's all like magic. Like we have no idea how people get hired when you're the candidate. So to clear it all up for us today, Manny Lara, the director of human resources for the Progressive Community Health Centers in Milwaukee. Manny, thank you so much for taking time today. How are you?
I'm great, Pat. Thanks for having me.
It's gonna be a lot of fun, and we've got a lot of questions because, like I say, sometimes we don't know why we don't get a job, and we're unsure what we did wrong. So, let's set the stage to begin with. What's the job market like? Are people hiring right now? Is it a good time to be a job seeker?
Pat, I would say that I know right now in healthcare it is. That's the space we're in. I do know that a lot of industries are coming back to hiring. We're seeing more job postings out there. I think there's also some positions that are more remote, so that it offers a broader job market. So you may not need to relocate. You could potentially work from home or your locale for other positions out there. So it really has expanded the labor pool as well. So
yeah, and that's important, especially with technology jobs, with remote work happening. And you mentioned the healthcare sector. I think when people sometimes think healthcare, they think, rubber gloves and helping people, but there are a lot of IT opportunities inside healthcare. Are they looking for those kinds of jobs?
Yeah, I would absolutely. And you're correct in that healthcare isn't just clinical. We have several non-clinical positions that are clinical support, technical roles as well. I would say maybe 30 to 40% of positions in a healthcare system are non-clinical. Great opportunities to get into healthcare as well. And we really look at more of it as a career opportunity. So if you start at the front desk or telephone operator, how do you want to grow your career within the organization? And many organizations have tuition reimbursement or certification support programs. They can start in a non-clinical and move into clinical if they so choose. But that's a great opportunity. It's a great ecosystem to start in potentially. So
now you say clinical. That's such a more professional way than saying rubber gloves, but you know what I meant. So
Yes,
I appreciate that. Thank you.
yes, no
All right,
worries.
so let's talk about that person that maybe is at a front desk type of job right now, or maybe they're not really skilled with technology.
Mhm.
What kind of training can help them move upward in their career? What are people looking for?
Well, I would say, I mean, even the interviewing process, there's some degree of technical ability. So we're starting to do interviews remote using Teams or Zoom. So being familiar with that technology, I think, is definitely a plus. And even in the workplace, we're collaborating more using those platforms. Aside from that, I'd say basic office skills like Excel, Word, definitely helps with those kind of opportunities. Uh, the more advanced in healthcare would be more our electronic medical record systems like an Epic or Cerner. And that might take some training while you're in the job, but certainly doesn't necessarily, we don't require that of everyone in our role, in those roles. So I
Mhm.
would say looking for those opportunities where you can demonstrate your technical skills. At a minimum, though, we are looking for people that have great customer service skills in those front desk roles. We're seeing patients now more in the clinics these days. Now that we've put in more protocols, clinics are opening up a little bit more, and so you really have to have the right people with the right attitude in those positions. And I always say you can certainly train the skill set. It's more challenging to train the attitude, though. So I think it's really important to have that as a baseline.
And from a director of HR, what gold, right? How you show up is not necessarily your resume. It's how you show up and do you want to be there? And that's, I wouldn't call it a soft skill. It's more of a personality trait. Are you kind of sniffing that out in the interview process?
Absolutely. I would say that you know the opportunity to demonstrate on a resume can be challenging because you really got to make that first impression on paper. That gets you in the door. Once you're there, demonstrating those abilities of you're on time, you're pleasant, you're prepared. Really, really important for that first interview. But certainly that application or that resume is how do you demonstrate that you've done that kind of work in your history? So if you can showcase those, even in volunteer opportunities,
Mhm.
those can go a long way. And our recruiters will look for those instances where you've demonstrated that in your career, and you could be a good fit for the organization as well. So,
That's great. Well, that's great background to set the stage for the second part of our conversation, which is what exactly is going through the HR person's head? So let's go there. So we've talked about the background, but when you post a job and applications start rolling in, how do you initially review the flood of candidates that come in applying for one of your jobs?
yeah, that's a great question. And
And I think we might have lost you there, Manny. Hey, we lost Manny. Oh, there he is. He's back.
sorry
All right,
about that.
pal. No, that's
Uh,
okay. Go ahead.
so, we're good. Okay.
Yeah, we're good.
Sorry. So I would say, yes, we looked through many applications. We do a lot of our technology in the applicant tracking system allows you to post questions for applicants to answer. And so, if we're looking for a minimum amount of experience in certain fields or a certain competency, we might ask that in the application process. So that will help screen through those who are truly qualified for that position. And from there, we then look at what's your job history look like? Have you had work in healthcare or in that particular industry? And as well, what other competencies do you bring to the table? Customer service, teamwork, initiative, projects you might have been on or led. So that really stands out to our recruiters when they look through applications. So.
And I think from the outside looking in, let's diagram it just a little bit. When we
Mhm.
apply for a job and there's a question that says, do you have 2 years of experience doing the thing? If you say no, you use the word screen. That means they're probably screened out. Is that right?
That's correct, and it's not for all of our positions. Obviously, we're becoming more flexible with skills and competencies. I think we're a bit rigid in HR and the industry around a very tight rubric around what we're looking for, and you start to lose a lot of talent that way because they may be transitioning from their career to a new career or new industry. So we want to be more flexible with that. So I would say, but if it's a more technical position, let's say, a nurse or an LPN type role, yeah, you're going to want at least the baseline for that. But our experience, we know that not everyone has 5 to 10 years of experience in that particular profession anymore. So we do work with our hiring leaders to make sure that we're being more realistic with what the job market looks like.
So to finish the thought then about the process, so if someone is screened in or out based on those eligibility or prerequisites for the position, the next thing you're doing is then starting to look at their work history and getting a feel for what they've done in their career. So then you really start judging the applicants after they pass that first hurdle, if that hurdle is required. Am I hearing that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
And again, we look at, like you said, the soft skills. Is that coming across in your resume? Have you done even volunteer work? Again, that's really important. That tells us that you're mission oriented, and that's what we look for in our applicants.
That's great. While we're on this subject, we got a great question in the chat from Gary. So Gary wants to know, how can you get into the healthcare field in a higher IT position if you don't have healthcare experience? What would you say to Gary?
Yeah, I would say that look for organizations that might be smaller sized that need that IT expertise. So I think the bigger the organizations, the more they're going to want somebody with some healthcare background. But I would look at smaller healthcare systems or clinics or even those organizations that work in healthcare, because they don't have they may not have as many of those applicants with that background. So they may be more flexible or broad-based with what they're looking for with someone with IT skills. I know that was our case. We had a few IT folks that were non-healthcare background, but yet they had enough of the competencies that they knew the IT systems. They could bring new ideas to the table as well. So
that's great information. And Gary, great question. If you have questions, put them in the chat and we'll get them in with our guest today. This is The Interview presented by New Horizons of Wisconsin and sponsored by Forward Careers. Our guest is Manny Lara, the Director of Human Resources for the Progressive Community Health Centers in Milwaukee. So we're on to some more of these tactical interviewing and decision-making kind of questions. So how do we help ourselves stand out? So we might have screened into the position, but now you're starting to look through our things. What are some of the things that jump out that help us stand out from the competition?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I would say looking at the organization that you've worked for, I would also look at what does the job posting say to see if it matches up with your particular background and experience. So I'd say, like, look at, what is your experience and can you match it up to what the job posting calls for? Many times you could just basically making sure that your rhetoric, in the resume matches up with what the industry terms might be. So I would look at those things. Also look at what role is this trying to solve for, like what the role calls for, and have you done that same thing in your career? It might not be a one-to-one, but if there's something related to that, so you've solved problems in a particular role that's similar, you want to showcase that. And so I would say my advice is look at your resume very closely before you submit that, so that it matches up as best it can to that job posting.
And that's something that many applicants don't want to hear because they may be applying on more than one job at the same time. And it takes a little elbow grease to make sure you're customizing your resume for every application. So let's pretend that someone screened through and you're kind of interested in them. I would imagine everybody does it differently, but how do you do it? Do you go to phone interviews, in-person interviews? What do you like to do next?
Right away, it's a phone screen, and it's about 10 to 15 minutes. And really what that does is it helps us align the applicant to the position. Are they applying for the right position? Do they understand what the role is? And you want to get that through the phone screen right away. And then also setting expectations about schedule, about what's required of the position. Even the size of the organization is important in that phone screen. And then probably another really important factor is salary range. That's in all of our screening questions and it's kind of one of the last questions to ask that applicant, because you want to make sure you're aligned. If they're shooting for something higher and you're, let's say, a nonprofit, small organization, you may not be able to meet that. So it's good to get that and not waste a lot of other time, sending somebody through an interview and then at the end of the process, you talk salary and it's way off. So it's really an important part of that first phone screening step. So.
Now, we need to talk about that, though, because you can't say we're going to talk about salary and not expect to get questions.
Sure. Yeah.
If you're an applicant now, be an applicant. Don't be the HR lord here. Be an applicant. Hey, what are you looking for? Are you throwing out the true number? Are you plussing it up 20%? I mean, how would you go about it strategically if you're the applicant to get paid what you want to get paid?
Yeah, I would be, you want to be as authentic as you can be and look at a range. You don't want to necessarily have a hard number in place because it allows little flexibility for the recruiter. But if you have a range and also do some homework around the size of the organization, type of organization. If it's a for-profit, they might have a higher salary range. If it's a non-for-profit, smaller organization, you want to be more realistic about that salary range. You may not be able to make what you made before potentially. So, but if it's an aligned organization, the role is similar to what you had before, go ahead and ask for that. Again, just leave some room for discussion in there as well. So
that's good. Another question that comes up often, at least I'm always curious about. So if you're willing to tell us, I'd appreciate it.
Sure.
So I apply, I pass the screening, we have the phone call. Okay, everything seems to be going fine. We get through the money discussion. At what point are you looking at their social media to see if they're crazy? Do you do that?
Frankly, we don't. Not for everyone. I'd say we just don't have time to do that for everyone. It's not always material that's accurate, or you may be looking at the wrong person potentially. I would say certain positions, though, I would say higher level positions, let's say a specialty role or a leadership role, we might look at your LinkedIn profile, and that's about it, because it's a little bit more professional social media channel than, let's say, Facebook or Instagram. So we will look through that just to see, like, what's your network look like? Does it align to your resume? What are the things in there you may have left out of the interview? So we may look at that as a minimum, but we also don't make our decisions based on that. So if you don't have a LinkedIn profile, it doesn't rule you out. It's just something we know that, maybe there's a reason you don't, or, it doesn't, if you got other skills that come to the table, then that's fine. But we'll just do an initial, look on that. But for most positions, frontline positions, even clinical, we don't scour your social media for anything like that. So.
That being said, it is a good practice for someone that's job seeking, though, to maybe take the keg stand pictures off of their Facebook page. I mean, that's not a bad idea, is it?
No, I would absolutely, like, if you're in job search mode, screen through your social media, because I'm saying that's our perspective. Other organizations might have different processes on that, so they might be looking at those social media channels. So yeah, you want to make sure you're not putting something out there that's questionable. I'd recommend that to anyone anyway. So definitely a good idea to do that.
So we got through the screen, we got through the qualifications, we got through the first call. Then we're doing a more in-depth conversation for some of these roles. What are some of the do's and don'ts when you get into the real discussion and the real interview?
Yeah, no, that's great. And right now, I would share, because of our safety protocols, our first interview will likely be a Zoom or Teams interview, so online, with that first interview member. So making sure your technology is working and you're ready for any pivots you need to make during the interview. So let's say your camera doesn't work, or your video goes off suddenly. What's how you're adapting to that. Just being prepared for that. Technology is not always, obviously we have challenges every once in a while. So just making sure that's in place. Prepare for the interview. What I will recommend is, most interviews are what we call behavioral based interviews, meaning questions related to your work history. Tell me about a time when you had a conflict with a team member. So, coming up with those kinds of questions, and there's plenty of resources out there that give you a lot of general questions that employers will ask. Do your homework, write those things down, script it, put it in a notepad. It's okay to refer to those while you're interviewing as well. But the reason why we ask those types of questions is to help somebody be authentic with their response. And frankly, if you have not seen an instance like that, or you have an experience, it's okay to say that you don't. Don't make something up or try and fool the interviewers. And sometimes maybe it's much more technical, but you're at least authentic. So yeah, I would say prepare. I would even recommend if you've got friends or family to do a mock interview. Say, hey, ask me these questions. Give me some advice on how I do. Because that can also help you feel more relaxed when you actually see the interview panel. So,
and I think it's important to be really crystal clear about something as we talk to someone in your position. If someone's faking it, you can tell, right?
Correct. Yeah, especially if there's a lot of generalities being used or can't quite understand what their role was in that experience. Yeah, you can really dig in, and you might even have an interviewer ask some follow-on questions when they've kind of spotted that. So just again, if you don't have a lot of experience, just say that. I would also say if you don't have maybe relevant job experience, it's okay to share that. So I think about volunteer opportunities, or you were a coach, or you were on a team or something where you actually demonstrated that competency. It's okay to pull that in as well. So
that's a great piece of information. And one more question when we're talking about virtual interviews, and we've got one in the chat we're going to ask in just a second. Many of our clients and students might not have reliable technology. If someone says we're doing a Zoom interview, would you work with someone that says, I don't have access to do a Zoom interview? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's quite fine. We will make adjustments if we need to. We know that's not, and if you're part of our organization, we provide equipment that if we needed you to work remote, you're not having to get that stuff yourself. So we make adjustments. We can be adaptive. We can use the phone conference line as well. But yeah, I think we've not had that challenge yet, but we have had video go out and we had to pivot to phone discussion during the interview. So
that's great. We've got time for questions. If you have them, drop them into the chat. We've got a question from Brian. Are there any tips you can share for those that are new to doing a virtual interview? What are some things that are a big turnoff to HR and hiring managers?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I would say just making sure that you're dressed appropriately for that. I think it's number one, right? And it's just like you're going in for an in-person interview as well. So making sure, and they're going to see from the waist up anyway, but just making sure that's appropriate attire, making sure that you're in a good setting so that you're not having to worry about distractions behind you. So, find a quiet room or a space in your home that you can't be disturbed for that interview. So I would be recommend that don't do it in a coffee shop if you can avoid that, because you might have some distractions there too. So
that's great. Thank you for that. And Brian, great question. All right, the next question I'm going to craft like I'm the HR person. Okay, are you ready?
Sure. Yeah.
Can you tell us about a time that an applicant has gone above and beyond in the interview process? That sounds like an HR question, right? Can you tell us about a time? Isn't that how you open some of your questions? So tell us about a time that someone stood out in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say we had an applicant that they basically provided a PowerPoint during their Zoom interview. So they answered the questions in person, and they wanted to demonstrate some of their work, and so they asked, like, is it okay if I project some of my work on PowerPoint to demonstrate what I've done? And that really wowed us, because it was definitely above and beyond. Wasn't expected. Usually, it's usually an in-person kind of exchange, but that really was a great kind of next step. So.
That's a brilliant idea, and something that wouldn't necessarily be possible in person. I mean, in person, you could hand a printout perhaps, but what a great way to show off your stuff. We've only got a few moments left here with Manny. If you have questions, drop them in the chat. We'll include them. So let's say we've already talked a little bit about money. But we get down to the offer stage. Do you
Yeah,
expect people to negotiate with you when you say, "Hey, the job pays
yeah.
$10?" Do you expect someone to say, "Man, I was really hoping for 12?" Is that part of something you consider?
Yes, absolutely. I would say you're your own best advocate. So if you feel that your value is more than that, it never hurts to just ask that question. We won't ever say, "Oh, sorry, you're too high for us. We're done." We will respond to say, "This is." We might even have some flexibility to go up on our initial offer,
Mhm.
and we would respond to try and meet that negotiated pay rate as long as it's. We look at equity. So how does that compare to our own employees with similar experience? And what is our pay range too. So, making sure that we have some room to be able to do that. So I would say, yeah, absolutely, always negotiate for pay. You might not get it fully, but you might get more than maybe initially offered. So
It also shows some confidence and entrepreneurialism inside the applicant, right? If they say, "Well, 10 is great, but I was really looking for 12," does that
yeah,
say something about the person as well?
yeah, I think so too. And I would say, not just throw the number out, but maybe justify that to say, hey,
Mm.
I have so many years of experience, or I've done this kind of work already, and that's why I'm taking this rate. So it helps us understand that yes, you're being more diligent and you really want this job. So
I've heard someone say that you have more control on what you get paid while you're interviewing than once you're on the job, because then you might be, conditioned to the 3% raise every year or more standardized increase processes. Whereas if you advocate for yourself in the front end, you can set your pay scale at a set place to give you more runway moving forward.
correct,
Um,
yes.
if you have questions, drop them in and we're going to get them into the interview. But we only have one or two left for you, Manny. And this has been terrific information. This is exactly what we were looking for. We wanted to get inside the head of an HR manager and just kind of hear from them what they're looking for. Because when someone goes through IT training with New Horizons, they've got the skills, but now they have to go advocate for themselves and find the position. So this has been incredibly valuable. My last question for you would be, do you have any final words of advice or things that you want to share with job seekers that might be watching the interview?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say no, a couple things. First, don't be discouraged. There's a lot of the job market is getting stronger and coming back, so it's just a little bit, just a matter of time. But I would say just continue to be diligent with your application process. Look for the positions that really stand out to you. Don't. We can also tell when they're just blanket resume submissions or applications, and you're not getting a lot of substance there. So just making sure that you're really going after that job that you really want. The other thing would be network is so important. So look at your social channel networks, look at people who know your network, and let them know you're looking for something. So they may know somebody, or they may refer you to their own organization or others. So just letting your network know that you're on the hunt, and as well that they might be able to help as well. So
Those are great pieces of advice. And thank you so much for sharing everything that you did. Manny Lara, the Director of Human Resources for the Progressive Community Health Centers in Milwaukee. Manny, thanks for coming on, and I hope we can have you on again sometime.
yeah, happy to do it again, Pat. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a real pleasure. So, Manny, what an expert, right? If you're thinking about getting a new job, you're out there trying to get hired. That's the information we were looking for. And hopefully, we made you some money and gave you a leg up on the competition. So, if you're looking to improve your chances of landing a great job, make sure to check out newhorizonswi.com and chat with our training staff. They're standing by right now. Like, test them. Give it a shot. Go to newhorizonswi.com right now and say, "Hey, are you listening?" I guarantee you they're going to chat back at you because they're ready to help match you with the training you need to land a terrific opportunity. The website is newhorizonswi.com. Also, a big thank you to our sponsor, Forward Careers, for their partnership. Without them, the show is just not possible. So, the show called The Interview is exactly that. We talk to someone about helping you get a better job or move up in your career. It's a monthly show, it's the first Tuesday of the month. Our next one is scheduled for April 6th at 10 a.m. And we're going to interview Mei Yang, the project director for WIOA. We're going to talk about resources available for those that are unemployed. So if you're looking for a job, I mean, between now and April, you're going to get a great gig. Don't worry about it. But if you are still looking for something in April, come back and enjoy the show here on the New Horizons Facebook page, the Forward Careers Facebook page, or the New Horizons YouTube channel. We'll have the show here waiting for you. I'm Pat Miller, the Idea Coach. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thanks again, Manny, for coming on the show.